Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And today we have a very special guest in Raúl Esparza. Raúl, thank you so much for being here. Your fans have shown up in droves. How are you doing today?
I'm really well. Thanks for having me.
It is my honor, and let's just get right to it. Raul is one of the stars in Candy. It's a Hulu original series premiering on May 9th. As I just told Raul, I just finished watching it. It is a phenomenal story based on true events. Now, with that, let's get right to it. You have portrayed a lawyer on TV for a long time now. Don Crowder is the lawyer that you play in Candy. It's a very different role from ADA Barba uh, from SVU. What was it about Don Crowder that really attracted you to the role?
I loved his bravura. I also loved his kind of mercurial quality, the ways that he could be one thing one moment and then switch to something else entirely the next. I loved the sort of Texas world that the series inhabits. I liked his sense of humor. And I also love the fact that he turned out to be a truly great trial attorney without any experience whatsoever. Unlike, say, someone like Barba, who is a Harvard educated
Yeah.
ass with a chip on his shoulder, who's really, really damn good at what he does. Don was testing himself in an arena for the first time. And I was obviously going, well, it's an attorney. Should I do this? And yet he felt different enough and that it only felt like, well, they happen to have they have the same professional career, but they are in no way alike.
Mm-mm.
Little by little, Don began to creep in strange and different ways that began to play me.
Absolutely. Now, the story of Candace Montgomery is being told on Hulu with Candy. There's another show later on this year. What is it about this story that is coming out now? What do you think is the allure, going back into the early 80s, that this story is being told now on television?
I mean, I can't say why everybody has kind of dropped into this, or not everybody, but why two creators have dropped into telling this particular story. But I know that in Robin's case and Nick's case, what they tried to do here was kind of reveal the incredible horror story lurking underneath a suburban life
Mm-hmm.
and play with the idea that in the most mundane sense, really brilliant people like these women in particular, living essentially trapped lives like we all have been recently, um, uh, uh, these people broke, and
Yeah.
how they broke is fascinating, and I think it's something we can all relate to. And so another aspect too, I think that's one of the things we can relate to, but another thing too is this is a story that merits various angles.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really know exactly what's true or what's 100%. Half the time when you're working on on this particular series, you're thinking, I 100% disagree with the way things turned out,
Yeah.
and the other time, no, 100% I agree. It it's it sparks debate, and it sparks debate about the merits of justice,
Self
um,
defense.
self-defense, the games that get played in the press and publicity and perception, but then also like what what happens when people feel like the boundaries of their lives have got to be pushed,
Mm-hmm.
and how far it can go when that falls apart.
Absolutely.
And we're all relating to that right now because we've been trapped in our homes for the last 2 years.
Absolutely. We've gotten a lot of interesting questions from our viewers, and I'm going to read a couple from you, a couple of them here for you. Connie from Facebook has a question. Based on your research into how Don Crowder chose to defend Candy, did you come away from the project with a personal opinion about Candy's guilt or innocence in the verdict itself?
I did.
Okay,
I
that's fair. That's
don't want
fair.
to give anything away, but yes, I did. And I'm on Don and Candy's side. I'll just say that.
Okay, okay. Now, you have known for doing deep research into your roles. When it came time for Candy, how much did you delve into the actual events of what happened in the early 80s to build up the character and how you wanted to portray Dawn on the screen?
I did quite a lot. We had court transcripts at our disposal. We had crime scene photos. We had interviews with a lot of the principals. We had interviews with the authors of the book Evidence of Love. I read Evidence of Love. I listened to podcasts about the series. I found footage of Don. I found audio of Don. I did. There wasn't a lot out there, but I did the best I could to try to find his cadences.
Hmm.
We played around with how I walked and talked and the things I wore and some of the little idiosyncrasies that Don had were really fun to add into the story. So the more research you would do, the more you find out like he was a guy who worked out 3 hours a day. So that tells me something about how I
Yeah.
need to look. He was a really driven football player. That tells me something about how he approaches a defense case. He was really good at playing with the media. I watched him speak on camera and then got some sense of the cadences he used and the kind of ways that he was able to play the police and the media against each other in public
Hmm.
to try the case in the press a little bit. He was flying by the seat of his pants a lot. He said himself, I'm not the guy who's going to take this to trial. And then he decided he would.
Hmm.
So that told me something else about him. I decided not to look exactly like him. We kept a mustache that was fun, which allowed me to feel very different from myself and different from Barba, I guess, if I'm honest, and have a kind of mask on my face that made me go, oh, wait, who's that? It's not me in any way.
And it
That
helps you
was
get into character.
It totally does. Because what you're looking for with a character is like a way that you're constantly surprising yourself. You want a character to play you. Um,
Exactly.
you don't want to make decisions. You want that person to show up and surprise you. So all the what the research does is it gives me colors to choose from. Like I'm making a painting and I happen to be working in blue or green or orange,
Yeah.
whatever it is. It's not limiting. It's freeing. You build a scaffolding and then you just jump.
Let's go to the court systems. This is in the early 80s, and you've done research for Law and Order, which is in sort of modern day. For me, watching court shows all my life, movies, and so on, Candy seemed to really portray a different court system in Dallas, Texas. Was that a true depiction on what the court systems were like in Texas back in the early 80s, according to the
Yes,
research
absolutely.
that you have done?
According to the research that I know that Robin did, and what the reality of this trial was, some of the things we say are taken verbatim from from the case,
Wow.
and the animus of the judge towards Don and towards the case itself was also absolutely true. And the ways that the police, who were really inexperienced in dealing with this kind of case, because it was a small town about what, an hour outside of Dallas,
Yeah.
45, their inexperience also played into the facts of what was available for them in terms of forensics that I think affected the way the case was decided.
Yeah.
And all of that is very different from what we have at our disposal right now. The
Absolutely.
bias is really obvious. I mean, that bias is right on the surface. And
And
people made decisions because we know the players, and uh, that isn't necessarily the way things will work right now. I think we'd have a few more impartial facts in front of us
you
these days.
have a very powerful moment in the last episode. This is not a spoiler, where you stand up and you confront the judge in front of everybody. I mean, talk about having guts to do that. Is that something that was sort of embellished for the TV show? Did that actually happen according to the transcripts from the court? Tell us about that.
That actually happened. We ran with some dramatic license, but yes, it actually happened. That judge had a protege, and the protege was the prosecuting attorney. And the judge
Oh.
had made all kinds of decisions about how this case should go. I don't know. I don't want to say that he did or didn't, push it in a particular direction. They had a hard time finding a jury that they thought would be impartial because everybody knew about the case. And yet they asked for a change of venue, but the judge,
Mm.
they wouldn't grant it. And Don felt like they were just not going to get a fair trial.
Yeah.
And yet he did in fact stand up. As a matter of fact, I think we shortened it. I think that there were quite a few more contempt issues that came up with him, and it all began even before the trial because Don was talking way too much in the press.
Hmm.
his own team tried to muzzle him. He wouldn't stop. And I think he understood something instinctively about like they're going to make up their minds before they even walk in the courtroom. So
Yep.
I'm going to fight back. He has a very, very basic sense of right and wrong, and this is not justice. The judge is playing sides, and I love it when he calls him out,
Oh,
and
me
it's a
too.
really great thing to play.
I love that. I love that scene. I think that's one of my favorite scenes. We got to talk about Jessica and Melanie. Brilliant actors. We've known this for a while. Melanie, oh my God, what she can do anything, and Jessica is also the same. You had screen time, a lot of screen time with Jessica. Obviously, you didn't have screen time with Melanie. Watching the finished product and seeing these two amazing actors work, what was your takeaway from the job that they did in Candy?
Well, I can't say because I never watch what I do.
Oh, you're like me. I never watched one of my
I just,
shows.
yeah, I can't do it. It's I get too self-conscious. But at least the experience on set, I will say that Jessica's just a ferocious actress, and she just dove right in and gave it her all. She hits you with the weight, the emotional power of what she was playing, and the her willingness to be completely unglamorous about it,
Hmm.
and to truly transform herself into this woman was thrilling. The first time she walked on set, I didn't recognize her, and
Wow.
she lock eyes with me. And Don and Candy have a slightly antagonistic relationship, even though they're friends. She disagrees with him about the ways that the case should be tried,
Yeah.
and do because they begin to all fight each other. One of my favorite scenes to film with her was when they're trying to explain their case to their friends, and they're just like picking up each other's cues, going like, "I know this sounds insane, but to them it wasn't insane." And Jessica never missed a beat on that stuff.
Exactly.
With Melanie, sorry.
No, no, I was just going to say exactly. Here you have this suburban housewife and a lawyer explaining it to their suburban friends, and they're getting into science and personality stuff that's way ahead of what people even knew about in their living rooms back in the early '80s.
Yeah, exactly. And things I think that they're even trying on for size in their own mouths, as they're
Yeah,
saying. They're, I think Don was always questioning whether he believed it, but he believed in her 100%. So that
absolutely.
was fun to play because he had her back. He just did. And I found that some of the moments with Jessica felt surprisingly emotional, more so than I had expected when I first read it, because the case is pretty outrageous and he can be pretty outrageous, and it can flip into some wonderful comedy in a couple of places. But that was balanced out by moments together that felt very solid, where he's forcing her to deal with the reality of what happened, and it's painful. And she was with me every step of the way. And in terms of Melanie, there was a day on set in the courtroom actually where she just stepped on and we locked eyes. And I think Melanie is just a breathtakingly great actress.
Absolutely.
Loved her since Heavenly Creatures. She's exquisite to work with, inspiring to be around,
Absolutely.
and also just a really fun, cool, funny, great person to spend time with. So I left really jazzed by getting to be around these two magnificent women.
That is amazing. We have another question from Robbie on Facebook. Robbie says Candy and Glimpse, which is another coming upcoming project of yours, are being released within days of one another. Were they being filmed at the same time? And if so, was it difficult to switch to two different characters so quickly?
No, they were not filmed at the same time. Glimpse is a pandemic project
Okay.
that was made in, I think, July of 2020. We were all filming out of our tiny spaces, and Teresa Rebeck created that piece as a kind of, hey, we're stuck at home, let's make a movie idea. But she got some really amazingly talented friends to be in it, and it was about being trapped, and we had to be our own crew and hair and makeup departments. And it was when we thought, well, we'll never get out of our homes again, which is
Yeah.
part of it. Teresa and I had worked on her play Seared off Broadway just before the pandemic happened, and it had been a huge, huge success. And we were still wondering whether that was going to have a life, and then everything shut down. So no, they were entirely different
Okay.
experiences.
That
Candy was shot just, we started that in December, November, December.
That totally makes sense. Now, when playing a actual historical figure like Don Crowder, as opposed to a fictional character, in your method of acting and preparation, are there two different approaches that you take when you are portraying somebody that, exists, did exist, is real, as opposed to a completely fictional character?
I think no would be the short answer to that in terms of you're just trying to play a human being and be as honest as you can about how they behave, even if the situation that you're in is something like Candy, which is sometimes horrific and sometimes very funny. The reality for that person is the same as any human being. You're not trying to put a spin on it. So what the historical details give me is, as I said before, a structure I can build, colors I can play with, information that I need, but I can still use it or not. I'm not trying to be true to that person because this is not a documentary. It's Dawn, but it's our version of Dawn,
Mm-hmm.
and it still takes fictional license with the story because nobody can really know exactly what happened in that utility room or exactly what these conversations were, however many facts we base it on. And that's I find that really freeing. If I'm playing a completely made up character, sometimes it's a little bit harder because I don't have the structure to support me.
And
But
that's
even
where you
then,
got to build your own backstory.
you do have to sort of make it up, and then you're still pulling from yourself or things you read or places you've been. Every time I take a trip, it might someday feed into what I'm doing on stage or on screen.
Yeah.
Every time I hear a piece of music or I smell a certain scent or fragrance or I eat a meal or I read a particular story, all of that feeds into what makes me a person. But anything could be something I would pull from at some point in my life. I think about I played Arturo Ui off Broadway in CSC in The Irresistible Rise of Arturo Ui. Now that Brecht play is about Adolf Hitler.
Mm.
I didn't go anywhere near Hitler. I did a lot of reading about Hitler,
Oh,
but
yeah.
in the end, what came out was this strange, sick sort of hybrid of James Cagney meets a really creepy gangster from Chicago.
Wow.
Um, that surprised me. So here's a little bit of history and a little bit of something completely fictional.
Absolutely. We're almost out of time. I just want to ask you one final question before we go. Now, when you walked away, when you did all your research, what do you think Crowder's motivations were for the Candace Montgomery trial? Was it to further himself? He enjoyed the spotlight. Was it he really believed that Candace was in self defense? Was it a mixture of both?
I think it was a mixture of both. I think he was really good at getting that spotlight. He was an ambitious man. He ran for governor after this.
Oh,
He
you
tried
did.
another case, but wasn't successful with it. The woman that he defended, he thought he'd be able to get her off, and she ended up getting jail time for
Okay.
a case. He eventually came to find that he felt like he was a failure in his life. He had an undiagnosed bipolar disorder, and
Wow.
as the years went on, he began drinking, and then eventually, sadly, committed suicide.
Wow.
And Don never thought of himself as the great success that he had hoped to be, the football player, the sort of dream team athlete. But I think he accomplished a great deal as an attorney, and in this case, I think he really really nailed it. And I think there was that ambition in him, but at the same time, he believed in her 100%.
My
I don't think
opinion,
he ever.
yeah, my opinion of Don is he understood that a jury trial, regardless of what the evidence is completely different as opposed to a non-jury trial because you're playing on the emotions of the jury, and he got that, and he understood that, and he played it to perfection. Do you agree with that?
I would agree that he was very good at understanding how to tell a story so that people would fall into the narrative and not necessarily the facts. And I
Absolutely.
think he was really, really great at understanding the way that that town thought.
Yeah.
And I also think that, again, I want to reiterate, I think he believed in her 100%. And it really didn't matter um, what the result of this terrible crime and situation was. It's just that he believed in the motivations being honest.
Yeah.
She's not a killer.
No.
She really isn't. She's not insane. She's not a psychopath. Something went seriously wrong, but it could go wrong for any of us. And he believed that too. This is a church going friend who he had known for so many years. And he stood by that. So what he needed to do is exactly what you're saying: figure out a way to swing the narrative so that people would see their friend and
As opposed to
see,
a murderer.
as opposed to a murder, and also see something that goes well beyond reasonable doubt. He says it at one point: there are thousands of reasonable doubts.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
our standards now. There are.
Absolutely. Raul, I want to thank you so much for coming on here on this day. You're busy and sharing this with us. We have a huge audience today and they all love you. You did a brilliant job playing Don Crowder on Candy. Guys, again, the series is premiering on Hulu on May 9th. It's 6 episodes. Once you start, you're probably going to be just like me and binge watch all 6 episodes back to back. Thank you, Raul. Any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
No, I'm grateful that people tuned in today, and I hope that you guys enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it. That's an honest statement. It was one of the most creative things I've been part of, and I'm excited to see it. Well, not see it, but I'm excited to have people receive it.
I am right there with you. I do not rewatch any of my episodes, so I totally understand.
I can't even listen to myself sing.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you,
You do the
Raul.
last album, that's done.
I want to thank Raul Esparza for being our guest. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in live and those who are going to watch us later on. On behalf of Raul and myself, stay safe. And guys, always stay walking. Bye, everybody.